Welcome to Connecting the Dots, a laser-focused, quick-fire interview on food and the economy with international experts where we seek answers to questions all of us should be asking. I'm Ajay Jakar, Chairman, Bharat Krishik Samaj, Farmers Forum India, and as well as the Vice Chair of Action Track 2, Shift to Sustainable Consumption Patterns at the UN Food Systems Summit. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Lana Weidgenant, a climate justice activist focusing on the role of food systems in climate action. Lana is a youth vice chair of the United Nations Food Systems Summit 2021 Action Track 2. Lana is a native of Brazil and has a degree in public health studies from Johns Hopkins University in the United States. Lana, the work you are doing is fantastic, and I'm a fan of yours, and I'm so happy that you joined us today. Thank you for joining.
Of course.
You are the Youth Vice Chair of Action Track 2 on Shift to Sustainable Consumption Patterns. How has your experience been so far? And what do you think if the voices of the youth are being heard in the summit and its public engagements?
It's been really amazing being involved so far, especially with seeing so many different mechanisms for young people to be involved in the summit. You know, not just the youth vice chairs of every action track, but also the youth liaisons group, young people in the Champions Network, young people involved in youth-focused dialogues, a consultation for young people. The list goes on and on. So seeing so many different ways and for young people to be involved and for young people also to be having an influence in these different parts of the summit that are essential elements has been really amazing. And I think young people have really been involved in the structure and the decision-making of the summit, which I think is really important for meaningful participation. And I hope that one of the outcomes of the Food Systems Summit will be not only the amazing food systems actions and commitments we'll put out into the world, but also setting an example for what meaningful youth leadership looks like. And hopefully other UN mechanisms will follow in our path.
That's really nice. Which gets me to the next question. You are also the Deputy Partnership Director for Zero Hour, an international climate justice organization, and you've been involved since you were quite young. With Zero Hour, you organized the largest youth action strike in 2019, which set off a chain of youth movements around climate change across the world. What would you say to those who don't believe in the power of activism?
I've seen it work, and especially when you get something that everyone cares about, but no one is really talking about, or that is giving a lot of people anxiety. Just being able to say, this is an issue and we all know it and we should stand up and say something about it can be a really powerful moment. And I think now with food systems, there's lots of connections to be made to the climate movement and the momentum that has been made for the environment and for sustainability. And I think we're really doing that in the summit as well. And I really do believe in the power of organizing. You know, I continue to do that with Zero Hour, even during the pandemic in a digital form of campaigns. But moving forward, there will be more demonstrations of young people's need for climate action, because we can really show a lot of power by having young people demonstrate that we will be impacted, and that there's a large number that is a significant impact of people who will understand this needs to happen.
That's nice, and it's really encouraging what you're doing, and I'm sure it makes other people work the same way you are working. You've been involved in the Act for Food, Act for Change campaign with other youth leaders. What makes this campaign stand out, and how do you see it impacting the youth all over the world?
So one of the things that makes this campaign stand out is that it can really easily turn into a movement, and it's so easy to get involved. Anyone from around the world can pledge their name and vote for their top food systems actions. So it's a really easy and strong way for young people to have their voice represented in food systems. And it's also translated into languages from around the world. So it really is a global movement, and it's something that is open to having the voice of young people represented. I think it's also really powerful that it's connected already to powerful mechanisms like the UN Food Systems Summit, like being facilitated by major food systems organizations, GAIN and Food Foundation. So we're already connected to where young people can have an impact, and anyone can jump in and have their voice heard through what matters to them, and the open pledge and actions for change.
Very interesting. I think so. We'll have to get you to India also, maybe after the UN Food System Summit is over, to talk to the youth out here and make you meet other activists working the way you are working. I mean, it's really inspiring. You were instrumental in getting the large food chains in the US, such as Dunkin' Donuts, to start providing plant-based food options on the menus. You are also an advisory board member for Plant Dining Partnerships, which seeks to increase accessibility of plant-based foods in the food services industry. What drives you to advocate for plant-based diets as the way forward to a sustainable food system?
So it's actually, for me, a large motivator is the environment and climate action, because I realize, and of course, working in Action Track 2 with you on sustainable consumption, we realized that it could be really powerful for the environment, for climate action, and also for individual health if we have more healthy plant-forward options available to people. But a large barrier is that in a lot of communities, there simply aren't these options available, or they're not affordable, or they're not in a way that people recognize and is similar to what they're used to consuming. So just having these options available more, I think, is a really powerful first step and especially when it's marketed really well by some of these groups. They're really great at marketing once they release an option, and that just does so much of the getting consumer interest in for us. So I think it's really exciting when you're able to make these options more prevalent, get the attention and awareness up, and also it's something that you can so quickly impact by making an argument that just makes sense, that people are looking to eat more environmentally friendly where they can, that there is this growing interest in more environmentally friendly, plant-forward, plant-based food. And you can show that to a large chain, and before you know it, thousands of locations will have a new option. And that can really make a large difference, even if it isn't the perfect option, even if it isn't whole foods, plant-based, and the most healthy, non-processed. It can still open up a lot of minds to start thinking about, oh, instead of the beef patty, I could get a plant-based patty. And maybe I'll start thinking a little bit more about what I'm consuming and how I could eat in a more plant-forward way.
I think so. You've managed to, motivate a lot of people to move towards better diets, and it leads to, and it's like it gathers speed as it goes on. A recent report covered by The Guardian revealed that the Amazon now emits more CO2 than it absorbs because of sustained deforestation for commercial cultivation of beef, soy, and timber, mostly in Brazil, your home country. As a native, what are your views on the Bolsonaro's government destruction of forests and indigenous peoples' territories in the Amazon rainforest?
I think it's terrible. And I think that this is a major food systems issue that we see, where especially we see a large connection between the consumption and the production, which is something that I think we can really enlighten in forums such as the Food Systems Summit, because we see that this large demand for meat that exists in Western countries, such as the United States and countries in Europe, that doesn't just go nowhere. That isn't just something that has no impact, but rather is directly linked to increased unsustainable production practices, such as those that we see in Brazil, in order to feed that demand for unsustainable consumption. And so I think that is really on a scale, something where we can see the destructive pattern of consumption to production patterns being linked, because in Brazil, there's continuously more Amazon rainforest torn down, more Amazon rainforest burned, harming indigenous peoples, harming small farmers who can't compete with such unsustainable practices, harming the animals that are involved, and the environment, of course, and climate change. So it's just a really destructive pattern. And of course, we can also see how food governance and policy ties into this, because it's not just the practices that are happening from the agribusiness, but also the government allowing this to happen. So that always also shows how if we had the government act in a different way, this really might not have gone this far, might not have been the huge growing problem that it is.
You very rightly put it by saying that governments can stop it from happening. It's just not agribusiness, which gets me to the last question. We see a consolidation of the value chain in food, retail, agriculture, and technology increasing by the day, especially more in the pandemic year. Do you think this is a trend that accelerates climate crisis? If so, how can advocacy and activism help in holding these large companies to account?
I definitely think this accelerates the climate crisis. And I think that we need to check more on what's happening with businesses and engage more in that area. I think, especially for someone who has a background in organizing and movement, I see a lot of focus on government policy and what governments can do, and then just being angry at business. But at least in food systems, there is a lot of potential for us to engage with the businesses, show the good examples, because ultimately businesses are a lot of how we get food in food systems, and it's not just the enemy for the most part. With some exceptions of some businesses that are doing really terrible things, but for the most part in food systems, businesses are someone that we can work with, we can look to improve, we can dialogue between the civil society area from the research or the international policy, and kind of being more involved in that area aside from just saying like this is terrible, and just going to instead focus on what can be done in policy and in government. I think it's still a very key area, and it definitely, the patterns that we've been seeing definitely do accelerate the climate crisis, I would say.
I think that's a wise way to put it, that we can work with the businesses to improve the environment, to improve the climate, and that's exactly what we should be doing. Thank you, Lana. Thank you for being here for the interview, and we will be sharing this interview with everyone. And thank you so much for what you're doing on behalf of the planet, and I can speak on behalf of small farmers. Thank you so much for your good work, and best of luck for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.